The city that defines modern 21st century America, for good or ill, is Las Vegas, Nevada. From the glamour and spectacle of the Strip to the most severe ravages of the housing boom and bust, Las Vegas has evolved into the epitome of rapid change. Most visitors would be surprised to learn that our city has roots that reach back over a century to a very different Nevada, a very different America. This meeting of the Las Vegas chapter of the Fordyce Club celebrates the descendants of the exodus of African Americans from Fordyce, Arkansas, pursuing greener and sometimes freer chapters in the war years. In a city usually considered rootless and transitory, Woodlawn Cemetery provides the peoples of Las Vegas a tangible link to their past.
In the early 40s to mid-40s, 80% of the black population came from one town, and that town is Fordyce, Arkansas.
I like to say, if you are reading the obituaries, very often, if there is a photo that shows me that the person is African American, and they say, oh, this person was born in Fordyce, Arkansas, I say to myself, the next sentence is, and was a 76 or 77-year resident of Southern Nevada, which it almost always is, because they have moved here during World War II.
Woodlawn Cemetery, founded in 1913 as a gift from the Union Pacific Railroad to the nascent city, has expanded from a 10-acre parcel to its current 40-acre grounds, now housing the remains of over 28,000 souls.
That was the city cemetery that was founded by Mrs. Stewart, and she and the railroad company allocated that land to bury Las Vegas citizens.
A big chunk of downtown being dedicated to a cemetery? Back then, those were the outskirts. Woodlawn's at the edge of North Las Vegas. That's way out of town. And in that way, Woodlawn reflects how Las Vegas has grown in these fits and starts, grown in directions nobody expected.
In the early 70s, they widened the road and made it 2 lanes on either side with a center median. And they ended up finding some bodies that were not a part of the grave registry. And those were thought maybe that they had originally come from an Indian cemetery or Indian burial ground, or the farm that had originally been there from one of the families that lived there.
The growth and development of the grounds would reflect that of Las Vegas itself, with many storied individuals from the city's colorful past buried there in eternal rest.
If you're into Las Vegas history and you know anything of the names, Sam Gay was the sheriff for 20 years. He's buried there. The old timers whose gravestones you see there.
Mr. Pete Jefferson, buried by my grandfather, used to own the Brown Derby, which was one of the first black clubs, taverns in the city. There is Beam from the famous UNLV Beam Hall. There's Tamayasu from the famous Tamayasu Elementary School. Judge Babcock, the first mayor of North Las Vegas, is in that section. So anybody that was a pioneer in Las Vegas of any race, color, or creed would be in that cemetery.
Nowhere, perhaps, does the past speak to us more vividly than in the Veterans section, where graves from every conflict since the Civil War serve as silent testimony to the sacrifice of Las Vegans for their country.
I know that there are Civil War veterans who are buried here, and I've been told that that number is 8, and that 4 of those represented the Union, and 4 of those from the other side. And so to have both sides of the Civil War buried right here at Woodlawn, that's pretty special.
There are 2 guys, one was a Union veteran, the other was a Confederate veteran. They ended up living out here, becoming good friends, and they're buried side by side.
But there is another history on display here, if we can open our minds and look without prejudice. For it is in the very layout of the grounds that we can discern the story of the earliest Las Vegans, by where they were buried, the segregation and religious exclusion of their time carried to the grave.
This was not an integrated community. African Americans are in their area. At the same time, in the 1920s, the KKK is on Fremont Street. It's not as if developing Woodlawn Cemetery, they said, oh, there's nobody here who cares. Yeah, unfortunately, there were people who cared about whether in death they would be allowed to be as separate as they were in life.
The colored section, they would be able to choose where they wanted to be buried. That was in 1939. Before that, they had to be buried wherever the powers that be wanted them to be. But after 1939, we had our own section, Section O. Many of them do not have markers. So we were blessed as the Nevada African American Genealogy Society to procure the funds for this memorial, the bench of the unknown souls.
As America entered, then eventually emerged victorious from the Second World War, Las Vegas attracted families looking for opportunities as the country emerged from the Depression. A great migration took place from Arkansas by African Americans, for example, willing to risk uprooting their families and face systematic racial segregation for the chance of a new life.
Fordyce was a mill town, textiles, and it's in serious trouble during the Great Depression. Let's face facts. It was not just true of the South, it was going to be true anywhere. The people who are going to lose their jobs first, or are going to end up in the worst financial shape, were going to be African Americans.
Huge majority of the black families here are here because of the military. My father and so many of the preachers, my father-in-law, all of them just came through Nellis Air Force Base and chose to stay.
So the jobs that were connected with the military was some of the best jobs, best paying jobs that African Americans moving from the South could come out of the cotton field into a job working in factories where you didn't need to go to school or vocational school, just walk right in. You couldn't get that in Arkansas.
Woodlawn Cemetery was entered in the National Register of Historical Places in 2006 in recognition of its central role in the Las Vegas community and its unique longevity in a town where nothing lasts for long and the new is inevitably the enemy of the old.
Potter's Field is usually part where the county owns or maintains or pays for the maintenance to bury people who do not have the means to pay for a funeral themselves.
The upkeep is not like it should be. At this historical cemetery, you go in there and the sprinklers are on and they're watering the street. Half the graves are brown and burned. You see the sprinkler heads broken, the trash cans aren't emptied, and the streets and roads are horrific. There are a few sparse, beautifully structured places, but not the whole cemetery. As we all know, it's the head, it's the corporate that has to make the changes.
Woodlawn Cemetery should be the center of Las Vegas because of its historical value. As a genealogist, you can do research right there in Woodlawn Cemetery. And I think that for the future generations to come, it must stay and remain a vital part of the city.
To those of us that are native Las Vegans, that's part of our heritage, part of our legacy. That's our home, that's our peace, that's our foundation. And so I believe that it's absolutely necessary to know the importance and the significance of the people that are buried in Woodlawn Cemetery.
As Las Vegas looks ahead, as her people manifest her collective destiny, it will be those rare ties to her city's past, as exemplified by Woodlawn Cemetery, that will serve to ground us, to give us some idea of where we come from as a community and where we are headed.
First came here, of course now they're coming from everywhere, but everybody came from not only 2 states, 2 cities, Tallulah, Louisiana, and Fordyce, Arkansas.